Hey everybody, welcome to Songsmith 101. In the first episode, I talked a little bit about inspiration, and I described it as this out of the ordinary state of mind in which I just feel like writing a song, right? And in that state of mind, I'm confident and I'm trusting my instincts. I'm immersed in the present moment, and I'm very comfortable with facing uncertainty. If you haven't seen that episode, you can click on the link above here and check it out. Now, I realize a lot of that stuff sounds very esoteric to some people, not really useful to those who are interested in the nuts and bolts of the songwriting process. So this week, I decided to take a practical approach and use a song I released a few weeks ago called Dry to walk you through what the creative process is typically like for me. So buckle up. We're going to kind of see where the rubber meets the road here and see where we end up.
Didn't stay out late last night, so nothing's hanging over me today.
As I walk you through this process, I want you to be mindful of a few things. I'm going to try to point to the importance of routine, documentation, resiliency, as well as flexibility. I was first inspired to write the song Dry on August 18th, 2018. And I know that because I documented it in my journal. And in fact, because I did that, I can recall a lot of information surrounding the initial phases of inspiration when it came to that song. For instance, I remember that the night before I played in Memphis, Tennessee, down on Beale Street. And after the show, there was definitely a temptation to go out and indulge in Beale Street and have a little bit to drink. But at that point, I remember I was trying to kind of clean the liver out because I'd been drinking a little too much. So instead of going out after the show, I went to bed. The next day, we had a show in Gulf Breeze, Florida. And I woke up that morning on the bus and I thought, man, I feel pretty good. I'd gotten a good night's sleep. I hadn't overindulged in the alcohol. It was kind of great. So I started my morning routine. And my morning routine, especially when I'm in writing mode, is pretty simple. I wake up, I drink some coffee, I read the news. Then I'll usually read some poetry or some sort of something that'll kind of get the wheels spinning. Then I usually do some writing in my journal. I'll do just some free writing for 10 or 15 minutes, just stream of consciousness, kind of gibberish for the most part. And that kind of gets me in a pretty good spot where I feel like I can maybe be creative. And then that's usually when I'll pick up the guitar and mess around and see if anything happens. And this is the guitar I typically have with me when I'm on the tour bus. I keep it in the back lounge, and I use this particular guitar because A, it's quiet. It's quieter than my other guitars, and I don't want to disturb the guys that might be trying to sleep in the bunks. And also, it's just a really fun guitar to play. I don't use a pick with it. I use my fingers. So I just tend to play differently. And when I finger pick, I can usually stumble upon rhythms that I probably wouldn't stumble upon when I'm using a pick. Now that particular morning, I was messing around with this. Simple enough. Coming up with a musical idea isn't really that hard. Most of the time, even musical ideas don't necessarily inspire me to start a new song. It's usually just messing around. But that particular morning, when I was doing that, I didn't stay out late last night. All of a sudden, I had something to say. I was relating it to exactly where I was in my life and was able to spill out a whole verse pretty quickly. For me, the routine of reading and writing and messing around on the guitar is an exercise. Most of the time, it doesn't produce a song, but every once in a while, a lyrical idea and a musical idea will come together and it'll give me a vehicle to express something that I'm dealing with personally or express something that I'm feeling very deeply. And when that happens, it's extremely exciting. And I begin to have those qualities that I've talked about in episode 1. I feel very confident. I trust my instinct. And I just go. It's an exhilarating experience. But it's also very unpredictable. Sometimes inspiration will last hours and hours. Sometimes a whole song will come out in a very short amount of time. More often than not, though, it takes a little more patience, and that's what happened with Dry. The first verse came out very quickly. The idea for the chorus came out very quickly. Drinking myself dry. It seemed like it had a lot of possibilities. However, in that moment, on that particular morning, I just didn't have anything to add to it. Anytime I tried, I ended up repeating myself in some sort of way or trying to fill in the space with cliche. Therefore, I said, all right, I think I'm out of gas, and that's okay. I'm going to move on. And that brings me to the importance of documentation. Not only do I have the journal entry from that day where I wrote down the lyrics that I first came up with, but I also got an iPhone voice memo, which is very important because sometimes it can be very difficult to remember the nuances of a musical idea. So if I look at my voice memo from that date, I can find my original recording, which at that point I called Drinking Myself Dry, from the back of the tour bus. Because I had the audio recording on my phone and had written the lyrics down in my journal, I didn't feel a huge sense of pressure to finish the song that day. Although part of me can get frustrated or sad whenever the wave of inspiration kind of ends, it's okay, it's natural. I can always go back to that initial recording and go back to my journal and try to get re-inspired. Sometimes that happens the next day, sometimes it's the next week. In the case of Dry, I didn't finish the song until 10 months later, but I never gave up on the song. I was persistent because I felt like I had a good idea, and every time I played that audio recording back, I felt something. It's like a story that was not quite done yet, and I was just waiting on the right way to end it. Over those 10 months, I wrote other songs, I explored other ideas, but I never completely forgot about that particular idea. On June 9th, 2019, I was in a very different place and in a very different state of mind than I was in on August 18th, 2018. On that morning, I actually had drank the night before. I was hungover, felt like crap, and I was angry with myself. In fact, that's when I wrote the second verse to the song. Some days I wake up fighting mad, I feel like whooping my own tail. And that morning, 10 months after I initially had the idea for the song, I was able to write a verse where once again I felt like the melody and the lyrics were coming together to allow me to express something that I was going through. I don't want you to misunderstand though. Every song is different, and the process of making every song is unique. That said, there are some common denominators that tend to be present. Usually, I'm in the routine of writing every single day and picking around on the guitar every day, looking for possible ideas. Also, I always document the ideas so that I have the option of coming back to them the next day or the next month or the next year. And I'm willing to be resilient when it comes to the idea, but not force the idea. I'm resilient but flexible. And I think those few things there are important to remember if you're an aspiring songwriter. So there you have it. There's a real example of what the songwriting process tends to be like for me, even though each song is a little different. I hope you found this informative and interesting. If so, please feel free to leave some questions or some comments below. Subscribe to the channel. Until next time, y'all take care.